Okay, so morning everyone. Welcome to day 2 of our virtual careers event, and welcome back to anyone that joined our introduction session this morning. So this our presentation or our slot, we've got Charlie, who's one of our M&E engineers, who's going to talk to you about kind of his experience on placement and what it was like coming back to work at JN Bentley. And then you'll have the opportunity to ask any questions at the end. So there is a little kind of Q&A chat option on the right hand side of your screen. So if you do think of any questions kind of as we're going along, just pop them in there and we can ask them at the end. But I will hand you over to Charlie.
Yeah, morning everyone. Charlotte said I'm Charlie, an M&E engineer. There's a picture of what I used to look like when I cared about my appearance and left the house. So I'll just discuss a little bit about my personal journey at JN Bentley. So it started off, I did a placement year in 2017-2018, Wrexham 5 Fords, which is in North Wales. Then after that year, I returned for my final year of study at Sheffield Hallam, completed my bachelor's in mechanical engineering, and then soon after that returned straight back to JN Bentley, but now based out of the Leeds office, generally working on sites around Yorkshire. So I'll discuss a little bit about my career aspirations. So I just kind of taking things in small steps, but the next thing I'm looking at is my professional registration, which if you're studying engineering, I'm sure is something that interests you as well. So JMB have a development scheme which can help lead you towards your chartership. There's basically a matrix of different tasks and things that you need to evidence that can be met by, with the kind of work that we get involved with at JMB. So then that matches up with the UK spec, which is outlined by the Engineering Council as kind of the minimum requirement of things you need to do to reach chartership. It's a good scheme as well. If you do come and work for us, it's the kind of thing that the directors really like to know how you're getting on with. I'll stop and chat with you about it. And then further down the line, you kind of have the opportunity to take a more technical or more of a management route. So I'm still undecided whether I'll take the project engineer type management route or try and keep as technical as possible. At the moment, I'm just trying to gain as much experience as possible. So I'll just discuss some of the most interesting projects I've been involved with. I've been quite lucky. I've kind of seen everything that the company does through placement or as returned as a graduate. So I've had the chance to work on Rolls-Royce, some water industry jobs, and also flood defence jobs for the Environment Agency, which is a good scope of things that the company does. So the first one is the scheme that I was on placement. So this is 5 Fords wastewater treatment works in Wrexham. So it's a £35 million job, which at the time, I think it was JMB's highest ever value scheme. And the type of works is it's a sewage treatment plant, and it's advanced anaerobic digestion. Without boring you too much, it basically means that we're trying to process as much biogas as possible from the waste. So it is energy from waste type works. I think people look down on the jobs that we have in the water industry as like some of the less interesting ones. When we've got clients like Rolls-Royce, everyone thinks that's probably kind of the most interesting. But I'd say from a mechanical engineering point of view, and like a process point of view, the water industry jobs are really, really interesting. They're basically like high-tech chemical plants. So this next slide, we're still on 5 Fords. So basically this top picture shows the steam boiler package, and this picture was posted on our socials because it was constructed on site in 2 days, which is obviously impressive. But then kind of the background to that is the work that we did as the M&E team. You see on this bottom picture, the entire plant was built in a warehouse prior to it coming to site. So we had regular visits to the site, me and a couple of different members from the M&E team, basically ensuring that everything's built to the correct specification. There's no major faults or defects, and just ensuring it's going to be perfect when it arrived on site. This is kind of some of the work that you'll do as an M&E engineer, especially working on the operations side of things. And then we also had to witness a FAT test, which is a factory acceptance test. This is probably one of my favorite parts of the job, really, because you get to go out to lots of different suppliers of equipment, and they basically push everything to the absolute limit. So this was a steam boiler, and we pushed it up to about 120% of its safe working load to prove that all the fail safes work correctly. You can also get quite lucky with FAT test as well. One of my friends, Harry, is a graduate at JN. After I'd returned to uni, he got the chance to go to Bilbao to witness a FAT test. So then this is FOSS barrier recovery. So it's another really interesting project I've been involved in. This is the one I returned to when I came back as a graduate. So this is a £30 million job. So, you know, almost reaching the same total as 5 Fords. That you can tell from the picture, it's on a much smaller footprint. So basically what this site does is you've got the River Ouse behind the trees in the background, which is a large major river in York. And then you've got the River Foss, which is a small local river, which is the one on the near side of the picture, which is about 50 miles from source to where it meets the Ouse. Basically what happens in real high floods is the Ouse water backs up the foss and floods homes on the north side of York. So we basically drop this barrier here and then pump the water from the foss into the Ouse. So in terms of process, it's a lot simpler than the job at Wrexham, but because of it's basically there to save people's lives and save people's businesses, there's a lot more contingency involved. Just to give you an idea on the scale of the equipment you get to work with, the 8 pumps that pump the water from the foss into the Ouse can drain an Olympic-sized swimming pool in about 50 seconds. They do 50,000 litres per second. And then if there's a mains failure, we've got 4 massive diesel generators. And an idea on scale again, they could power 2,000 homes. So you get kind of different jobs with obviously different needs, but then it's kind of the contingency on the Environment Agency jobs that makes them interesting. Anyone that's an electrical engineer, there's a lot of stuff in there that you'd find interesting that I won't be able to do justice. And then also just to kind of elaborate on how technologically advanced the site is, there's biometric fingerprint scanners to access every room, and we've got like gas suppression fire systems because you don't want water damaging your electrical equipment. So now I'll discuss a day in the life of a placement student. So we'll jump back to Wrexham in North Wales. I'll just kind of go through, you know, what it was like for me. So first off, in my first week, my line manager was actually on a training course, so I spent a lot of time with Kev James, who's like a senior electrical engineer. He really experienced some really interesting stories about the different industries that he'd worked in. Also within my first week, the operations manager came to see me. So the person that's managing all of Wales came, sat down with me, had a 15-minute chat and a cup of tea, really, just because he wanted to get to know me. And then also Carol, who's the admin assistant at Wrexham in the offices, she runs what they call like a speed dating, which, as it sounds, you kind of sit there for the afternoon, and then everyone in the office comes in and chats to you for 5 minutes, which I think is a really nice idea and a good way of getting to know people. Then within my first month, I felt like I'd pretty much already settled into the site team. I was already contributing. I think an important point to make is whether you're coming in as a placement student or a graduate, the term placement or graduate doesn't really matter. You're still going to be taking part, basically doing tasks that really help the site. There is no difference between a placement and a graduate in terms of the tasks that you get to undertake. And people are willing to listen to you, encourage you, and get you to share your opinion in meetings. Overall, I'm going to lead on to this in the next slide, but I got some really good clear job roles and became an important member of the team. So carrying on, this is more like some of the tasks that I actually did when I was on placement. So the first one that I got involved with, I'd probably been there about a month, and we needed to look at the feasibility of a temporary heat exchanger to keep one of the tanks at 35 degrees. It's quite a big job, but I'd recently been studying it at uni, and there wasn't anyone else on site that really wanted to take it on, or maybe didn't have as much background information. So I did it. Got to liaise with different suppliers, did some base calculations, and then kind of worked out a final cost for the heat exchanger, the boiler, and then the diesel for a 4-month period. And then I had to present that to the contracts manager so they could decide whether they were going to take that route or find a different way of commissioning. So straight away I felt like I was doing important tasks. Another job that I had when I was on site was the procurement and managing of M&E equipment. So I kind of acted as a middleman between designers and the buy-in team. So basically the designers, mechanical and electrical, had given me specifications on, what instrumentation, what pumps, etc. they wanted to buy. And then I'd take that to the buy-in team, who'd come back with a number of different solutions. And then I'd have to make sure that the solutions still met the specification outlined by the designers. And then from that, I kind of had to manage the delivery dates of all the equipment, which was important because, you might have a subcontractor coming onto site that's meant to be installing this equipment. You don't really want them on site a week before it arrives. So that had to be tightly managed. It was a pretty good job. And then also I've put down mechanical supervision. This is pretty broad, but you'll get a good understanding of what good installation and bad installation looks like. You also learn a lot about health and safety, which I know probably isn't high on many people's agenda of exciting things, but it is a big part of the job. I don't think it matters, which industry you go work in. If you are working in engineering, health and safety is going to be a huge part of your job, and the experience will really look good on your CVs and covering letters. So the next thing, carrying out testing. So my line manager kind of made like a little project for me and Harry, the graduate engineer, to do, which is hydrostatic testing of tanks. Which is simple in principle. You're basically just filling up the tanks and seeing if they leak, but then it gets more complicated because you have to factor in things like evaporation, and then also work out how you're actually going to fill the tanks up. You have to do like a temporary design of how you're going to route water into the tanks. These are huge tanks, you can't just fill them up with a hose pipe. And then also do like a risk assessment method statement and a test plan for that. So it was a good little project for us, really. And then also on that, I spent any downtime I had where I wasn't particularly busy. I shadowed the commission engineer. So we had Josh Sparks, who was the electrical engineer. He'd been a placement and returned as a graduate as well. He'd been at Bentley's about 3 years when I was on that site, but he was really experienced well beyond his years. I tried to spend as much time with him, try and grasp as much electrical knowledge as possible. So why choose a placement at JN Bentley? I think one of the key things is the company culture. So, in terms of people seeking you out to kind of get to know you, also the speed dating that I mentioned, stuff like that I think are quite nice touches, make you fit in really quickly. And then they also try and stick to their roots of being a family-run company, despite the fact that they've grown quite a lot in recent years. We've also got outside work activities. So like that picture on the screen, we did breakout rooms. I'm sure you've heard of breakout rooms or escape rooms. Quite common now, but yeah, it was a good night out. We also went bowling, go-karting, went for loads of different meals and nights out, but it wasn't just focused on, going to the pub. Also, put down there's a lot of great mentors really in the company. You'll find so many people that have kind of made their name in different industries and then come to work for JN Bentley. And it's quite nice to have a real varied background of or professional background of people anyway. And then responsibility, which I've already kind of touched on, but you're never really going to be limited by the fact you've got the term placement instead of the term graduate in front of your job role. So continuing on from that, why would you choose a placement at JN Bentley again? We've got I put down free trial because you've got about 2 years after graduating to choose a graduate scheme. Most graduate schemes stipulate you have to have graduated in less than 2 years. I think doing a placement gives you a fantastic free trial to kind of understand whether it's the right industry for you as well as the right company. Because me personally, I knew that I didn't want to work in manufacturing, but as a mechanical engineer, I think probably about 80% of the mechanical engineering jobs are manufacturing. So I kind of already knew that I wanted to work in more of a utilities and construction-based industry. And I've put down multidisciplinary because you're part of an M&E team, or in some cases an MEP team, mechanical, electrical and process. So the tasks that you get involved with will generally be dictated by whether you've done a degree in mechanical or electrical engineering, but then there obviously are skills to further your understanding of different disciplines, and you kind of have to understand all the disciplines a little bit anyway. And then it kind of gives you skills to complete your final year of study. I'll just touch on this because you've probably had this drilled into you at unis anyway. But in terms of like your project management skills, your commercial skills, the kind of things that look really good on a final year project, and also work ethic as well. After doing my placement, I treated my final year at uni as a 9 to 5 Monday to Friday job wherever possible. So my advice for anyone thinking about a role or career in M&E engineering, so I can obviously only speak from my own experiences. The first one I've put down is, I think if you're doing a degree in engineering, then virtually everyone's going to have one of these modules that's called like engineering practice, professional project practice, or project management that are seen more like business for engineers. I'd say pay attention to those because you'll find, obviously, when you're in the working world, generally not all your managers are going to come from technical backgrounds, and these kind of things will really set you apart. Understanding risk and risk management, stuff like that, it looks really good to people higher up in the companies, especially in this one. Again, I put be open-minded about gaining a basic knowledge of other disciplines. All the mechanical plant is powered and controlled by electrical equipment now, so you kind of have to understand both. And then also, if you find that you're doing a task, if you do come and do a placement or you return as a graduate, or just in engineering in general, you'll find that there's certain stages of the project that you don't enjoy as much. But I think that's the best thing about working on projects is as a project develops, so do the job roles and the tasks that you have to do change along the way. So you're never stuck doing a job that you don't like, really. I think that's probably one of the key things for me. So thanks everyone for listening. I think my presentation skills are a little bit rusty, but I hope I've given you a good background idea of what it's like to work at JNB. If anyone's got any questions, they'd just like to submit them to the chat.
Thanks, Charlie. I think that was really good. Yeah, as he said, if you've got any questions, just pop them in the chat at the side of the screen. Just a couple to start you off, Charlie. What was the most difficult thing about going from uni into the world of work?
I don't think the transition was too bad, really. I think the hardest thing was probably living where I did, because I was willing to kind of go anywhere to get a placement in utilities industry, and I've missed out on a lot of the ones closer to home. So I ended up moving to Wrexham on my own. Anyone that knows Wrexham, it's not really that glamorous. I think obviously when you're at uni, you're kind of all thrown in the same boat, whereas when you're going away to work, you know, there wasn't loads of people all suddenly moving to Wrexham to start the first year of something. Yeah,
no, that's fair. Where are you now then? Are you back up north?
Yeah, so I'm like meant to be based out of the Leeds office, but I generally spend all my time on sites or working from home at the moment. So I'm on York, still on the Foss Barrier, and I'm also working on Bentley Ings, which is in Doncaster.
That's where I'm from. That's nice. So why did you choose M&E engineering rather than kind of just traditional civils?
Well, I suppose that's going back to like why I chose my degree, really. But I originally chose to study mechanical engineering because I thought, well, I'm interested in the technological side of things generally, but I think mechanical engineering gives you a good basis to work in pretty much any industry.
Cool. What was it specifically kind of about the water sector then? Is it just sort of the variety of projects and it's slightly more interesting than manufacturing, as you said?
Yeah. Basically, wasn't like specifically going for the water industry, but just utilities in general. And I think I liked the water industry. I think it's, like I mentioned, I think it's a lot more advanced than you think. You are pretty much building chemical plants.
Yeah, cool. What has it been like sort of working from home and maybe not being able to go onto site as much because of COVID? How's that been?
I think, well, I still could go to sites. I think it's just the tasks that I'm doing at the moment. Coming to the end of the 2 projects that I'm on. So unfortunately, it's very much like a documentation stage. So I can kind of complete my tasks from home. But if we're in the middle of a project, I'd probably still be on site. I've spent a bit of money setting up a decent desk and stuff to have a good home setup. I think that helps.
Super. Did you say that you're on the development scheme?
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
How have you found that? How is it? Is it a lot of work, or kind of what does that take to go through it?
It's not too bad, really. You just kind of do. You have to write generally quarterly reports, just like 2,000-3,000 words with pictures, just explaining kind of what you've been up to, what experiences you've gained from that. I think it's a good tool as well if you'd feel like there's somewhere where you want to get experience, you can kind of use it. You can take that to your line manager and say, oh look, I need to tick this off, can you send me to wherever? So from doing that, I got to spend a couple of months on our Rolls-Royce site just to tick off some things on the development scheme.
That's good. Do you think kind of the development scheme route is kind of important for career development? Do you think it's something that people should try and do to kind of try and get that route to chartership?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think I was pretty much sold on it in terms of coming back as a graduate. that was one of the biggest selling points for me personally. I think a lot of people, if they are graduating from uni and and they want to continue working as a professional engineer, I think it's a major selling point knowing that you can get that progression at the company you go into.
Yeah, cool. How would you describe the culture at JNB?
I think generally it's kind of like, it is very, it feels like family orientated. It almost feels like everyone kind of knows each other, even though there's about 1,500 plus people. And then even, when you have to work with people in Mott MacDonald or JBA, which are different companies we've got partnerships with, I still think the mentality and stuff is really good.
Yeah, has it felt kind of the same working, sort of moving from Wales up to Leeds? Does kind of the culture kind of feel the same and it kind of radiates through the business?
Yeah, definitely. I've even worked with some of the same people on the site I was on in Wales, and then I moved back to York, and some of the same people got moved to this site, so that definitely helped.
That's good. What attracted you sort of to the placement at JN Bentley? Was it the role or was it the business? Kind of what made you want to apply?
Probably more the role initially. It was saying that once I got here, obviously I really enjoyed it, but I think originally it was just the role and the industry. But then coming back, it's obviously well, I don't know.
That's quite a hard question. What have you? So it did quite a lot of like your friends at uni do placements as well. How did they find theirs? Was yours better or worse or?
Yeah, I'd say a lot did placements. I think I'm one of the only ones that returned as a graduate and then stayed. So I think that kind of speaks for itself a little bit. But there was obviously still a few people that went on placements and returned as graduates.
Cool. What made you kind of want to come back as a grad? Did you start your placement thinking, it's a bit like a year-long interview, kind of I've got the view to being offered if there's a role and kind of coming back, or did you just see it as a year of experience?
No, I think I definitely tried to treat it as a year-long interview, really. After my first couple of weeks, I kind of knew that I was going to like it here. And then from that point in, I obviously just tried hard to impress and make sure I'd get the opportunity to come back.
Cool. Well, you must have done a good job giving it you back.
Yeah, thank you.
What's been the highlight of your time at JN Bentley so far?
I think that's hard, really. I've been, in terms of in a working sense, I've been lucky because I've moved from like one award-winning project onto another. So, yeah, I don't know. I think I did enjoy it when I was on placement because, like I said, I was moving somewhere completely different. I didn't really know anyone in the area, and I kind of made friends inside work. There was like a lot of new graduates there and a really young team, so it was kind of good to be involved with.
Cool. What advice would you give someone to make sort of a good application? So what makes a good application for a placement, do you think?
I don't know, I think I pretty much sold it in my covering letter. I showed an interest in some of the projects that JNB had already done. I'd actually used, in my first year at uni, we kind of did what's called Engineering Without Borders. So it was like a little bit of a project, and I actually cited one of JNB's hydroelectric projects as part of that. So I think that probably looks pretty good in my covering letter.
That's good. Had you heard of us kind of before you applied, or is that how you came across us?
Yeah, I'd heard before I applied. I had heard of you just through people at Mott MacDonald. We had people from the Sheffield Mott MacDonald office came into our uni when I was in my first year, so I kind of learned a little bit about JNB through that.
Cool. Can people, so it's a kind of dual M&E role, do people have the opportunity to kind of specialise in one or the other? Is that kind of an option?
Yeah, I'd say generally it's going to be dictated by kind of what you studied at uni. You know, whether people still ask you whether you're mechanical or electrical. I'd say you work within the M&E team to help each other out, really. So even, I've had chartered electrical engineers asking me why we've done or why something's a certain way from a mechanical point of view. So you kind of like help each other. One M and one E.
Super. How I think you might have touched on this already, but how did kind of what you studied at uni prepare you, or how did that help when you sort of started your placement, or was it totally different?
I think there's a few things that were kind of the same. I think it's never going to be exactly the same as what you studied, but I think if you've got like good base knowledge of all the modules you've done at uni, I think that'll definitely help you in working at JN Bentley. You might not be doing exactly the same calculations, but understanding why stuff happens definitely comes from what you've studied.
Super. I think, unless anyone wants to really quickly type another question, I think that is all of them. So we can finish a little bit early. Unless there's anything else, kind of, Charlie, that you want to add or leave them with?
No, that's it for me, I think.
Yeah, cool. So thank you everyone for joining us this morning. Thank you, Charlie, for your presentation. That was really informative. I'm sure kind of that's really helped everyone understand what a placement and grad role is like with us. So the next presentation we have is from one of our graduates, Alex, and that will start at 12 o'clock. So you've got a little bit of time to grab a drink if you want to join that one this afternoon. But yeah, thank you very much for joining, and we hope that's been helpful, and hopefully we'll see you on the next one. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.